It's August. I've got my bushcraft gear with me. I'm bushcrafting in August. No, honestly, I will be doing some bushcrafting. Hi folks, I'm Craig Taylor, and as always, a huge thanks for joining me here on my YouTube channel, The Bushcraft Padawan. If you're a regular viewer or subscriber, you'll know that for the past over 2.5 years now, I've made a commitment to get out for at least a full day or a full night, or possibly both combined together, into the woods at least once a month, every month. And I've done that for 2 years, 8 months now. I know it's 8 months because this is the end of August, so I thought to myself, whilst the sun is still shining before autumn sets in too much, let's get out and spend another day in the woods. You'll also know, if you're a regular subscriber, that rather than just come out and potter about for the sake of it, I always like to come out with a plan in mind, with things that I want to try or experiment with or refine or practice or go over again. And August is no exception. In no particular order, and I'm going to glance down at the floor here because I've got a few things on the floor to remind me what it is. I've taken a different approach to the tools that I bring out this month, and when I do a little bit of tree felling later on, hopefully, I'll explain to you why I wanted to take a slightly different approach with the scale of the tools that I'm bringing out this month. Do something a little bit differently. Once I've felled some wood, I would like to get a small fire going, probably starting it with a ferro rod onto birch bark and some silver birch twigs, and to go from there. Once the fire's going, I'm going to cook an omelette that I've prepped at home, just brought out into the woods with me. Whilst all that is cooking and the embers are burning down to cook that omelette, I want to start preparing some char cloth. I've run out of char cloth. I normally have a big reserve of it, and I've used it all. Just checking Willow out there. You can just make her out. There she is. Want to prep some char cloth. I also want to start making a net. You've seen me in a previous video talk about making a netting needle. And that might have been the easy part, actually. Now I need to remember how to actually use it to make the net. So I want to capture that on video as well. And if I've got any time left, I've recently bought an auger or an auger or an auger. You know what I mean, a drill bit. So I want to fashion a handle, even if I throw it away at the end of today, I just want to fashion a handle to fit into the auger. So the next time I come out into the woods, I've got a little bit of a head start for doing some woodcraft projects with that. So without further ado, let's get things moving along, and let's get this list ticked off. The small dead standing tree that you can see appearing at the top of my scalp just behind me there it is. That's my firewood for the rest of the day and into this evening. I'm not doing an overnighter today, just going to be into the evening. That's going to be my firewood. That gives me an opportunity to talk about, I'm taking a different approach to the tools that I'm bringing out with me in the woods today. Normally, as an absolute minimum, I bring with me my Mora Garberg carbon knife and my Barco folding Laplander saw. That's the minimum. I always bring that. I might bring an axe as well, but rarely. I might bring a folding book saw as well, but rarely. However, today I thought I would switch that out a little bit. I've left the smaller cutting tools at home on purpose, and I've gone the other way. Today I've brought with me my Hulter Classic Hunter's axe, or is it Trekker's axe? I can't remember. It's the Hulter Classic axe there. I've brought that out with me. And I've brought this absolutely magnificent and beautiful folding collapsible book saw that my dad made me that doesn't get enough usage. I need to bring this out more, or if not, I at least need to start using it more at home to book up some of the logs that we have at home for our log burner at home. So yeah, I've gone to the other end of the scale. Big scale saw, big scale cutting tool. I've left the smaller stuff at home. The reason that I've done that is, one, I don't get out with these often enough. Two, most of the stuff that I do, if I'm really honest, I can do very comfortably and safely with my Barco and my Garberg. These are for those occasions when I'm going heavier, when I'm planning to do a lot of felling, or I'm taking bigger stuff down, or a lot of cutting, or thicker cuts. I bring this stuff. But I thought to myself, even day-to-day life, forget being in the woods, even day-to-day life sometimes catches you unawares. It deals you hands that you weren't expecting sometimes. let alone when you come out into the woods, into places like this. And you know, one of those occasions might be on some occasions that my knife breaks or my saw breaks. It's on its last legs as it is at the moment, the Barco Laplander. So I thought to myself, you know, let's just put myself in a position for just a day, for an afternoon and an evening, where I am solely using this and solely using this. One, to get my money's worth out of them, but two, just in case something were to ever happen with my other smaller tools, and I've got these with me, I'm going to feel a little bit more comfortable, even doing finer tasks. So that's why I've brought these heavier tools out today. Let me know in the comments below, do you ever do that? Not just for cutting tools, do you ever bring something out that you rarely use in sacrifice to something that you use more often, just to get hands-on, just to try it out more often? Maybe you're a ground dweller, but every now and then you bring a hammock. Maybe you're a hammock sleeper, but every now and then you leave it at home and bring the inflatable mat out to sleep on the ground. Doesn't matter what it is, just let me know in the comments below. Do you ever kind of take the same approach that I'm taking today with how I'm sacrificing my smaller tools for my larger tools? Enough talk, let's get this down. Oh man, this is much easier than the Barco. Well, there it is. Fell nice and safely. Just walked it back and it's dropped nice and cleanly on the ground there. Now to start hacking it up. I'm going to take a slightly different approach to cutting this up, aside from the fact that I'm going to be using this bad boy. When I normally cut this sort of timber up for firewood, for logs, I've sort of got into the habit of cutting it into sort of foot-long pieces, or maybe 18-inch pieces, something like that. And I don't really know why. Well, I think I know why. We've got a log burner at home, so I cut a lot of wood up for that. And clearly it's got to be a certain size, about a foot long, in order for it to fit into the log burner. But when I was out on the intermediate wilderness bushcraft course a couple of weeks ago, I'm linking to it in the top right hand corner of the screen, we employed a lot of sort of starfire and Indian fires, where we take, you know, fairly big pieces, fairly lengthy, 4, 5, 6 foot pieces. I'm just pausing because the dog's wandering around under the tripod. I expected the whole thing to come crashing down. We took long pieces and just fed them into the fire. Now, I'd been aware of this technique, I was aware of this technique, I'd used that technique, but for some reason it just wasn't my sort of go-to. I'd spent more time, energy and calories cutting that 6 foot up into 6 1 foot pieces when there was absolutely no need to. So today I'm going to do the minimum amount of cuts possible with a bigger saw, so more economical, and I'm going to use that sort of star fire formation, star firelay technique. Again, not really sure why I don't do it more often. I think it might be down to the whole used to cutting things up in the log burner at home. Let's get this done. I'm going old school, new school. I'm using the using my lighter. That's the fire roaring away there, as you can see. What you may be able to see, let me try and point you out if you can't, but there's 1, 2, and then right in the flame itself, behind the flame, 3 of those pieces of dead standing that I took down. I've not done a 360 fire startup or star fire Indian layout or anything like that. They're not coming in at 90 degrees to each other. I've got them all coming in from that direction, because where you're stood now looking at this, where the camera is the area that I want to move in and out of around the fire to where my admin area, my hammock area is. So I don't want any logs in that area, because I don't want to be running the risk of tripping over them. So exactly the same principle, but rather than coming in 4 different directions at 90 degrees, I've got them all coming in at the far side of the fire over here. Same principle, in my opinion, though, just a little bit safer. The fire is roaring away to itself over there, consuming those thicker pieces of dead standing, getting some nice embers going. The dog is just out of camera shot, being as big a pain in the backside as she always is. I'm about to start making some char cloth, and I thought to myself, why don't I talk you through not how to make it, you probably know that by now, although I'm linking up in the top right hand corner of the screen right now. Yeah, there she goes. There goes the tripod, being a pain in the backside. I am linking in the top right hand corner of the screen now a video where I talk about how I make a char cloth using a tin with no hole in the lid. This particular tin does have a hole in the lid, just because this isn't the one that I normally bring out. This is my bulk manufacturing char cloth tin. I want to talk to you about the cloth that I'm using to make the char. There it is. Let me talk in a bit more detail. In the past, when I've made char cloth, I always use old t-shirts, similar to what I'm wearing now, 100% cotton, and they work. They char well, they take a spark, brilliant. But when they've been charred, let's be honest, they're not the most robust piece of kit. You've basically burnt them, right? They're basically falling apart. They're very, very delicate. And on occasions, I've taken them out of my char cloth tin or wherever they've been, and it's been powder, which could cause a problem. So what I've started doing recently is I've been using some old towels. And if I hold this up now to the camera, let me stand up and get that into focus. Let's keep that still. So I'm using some old towel. It's much, much, much thicker than a t-shirt. It's also got a loop pile on the top, as you see there, which actually gives it some extra bulk and dimension. And I've found, since I've been using this, it chars just as well, it chars just as quickly, it catches a spark just as well. I actually think it catches a spark slightly better because of that lifted pile. But anyway, the real reason, the key reason for using toweling now is it stays nice and thick once it's been charred. It's much more resilient, it's much tougher. You can throw it about a little bit more and not have to worry about it as much as thin t-shirt type material. So that's what I've been using for some time now, and that's what I'm going to char today, this nice thick 100% cotton towel. Just don't tell Mrs. T if you see her. Have you ever had one of those moments in life where you thought to yourself, why did I say that? Why did I tell people that? Why did I commit to that? I have. It was a few minutes ago when I told you that I was going to make a net on camera in this video. Literally as the words were coming out of my mouth, I was thinking to myself, hang on a minute, you haven't practiced this at all since you finished your course. You weren't that good at it on the course. You got better, I got into quite a good rhythm, but it's been a few weeks since that course. I haven't practiced it at all. So for those of you hanging on to this point in the video thinking, oh brilliant, my entire life has revolved around seeing Craig make a net in the woods using his new netting needle and some jute twine and a spacer. I'm not entirely sure for you, those of you that thought that, what the next few minutes are going to hold for you, but I'm going to do my very, very, very best to try and recollect how the hell you do this. I may at some point, don't tell anybody, it's just between you and me, just the two of us, I may at some point have to jump onto my phone, onto YouTube, and bring up one of my one of the videos that I've bookmarked to be able to remind me how to get this started. And that was the thing that Paul mentioned on the course. The actual making of the holes after you've got started it's not simple, but because you do it basically it's wash, rinse, repeat, wash, rinse, repeat. You do the same thing over and over and over again, hundreds of times potentially, but you only start a net once. You only ever start a net once. Thousands of holes in it, but you only start it once, and that's the problem. You don't do it very often. So I've only done this once, and it was weeks ago, and I needed some help with it. Why don't we crack on and see how I get on second time around with this? Fingers crossed. Now, if this hasn't become clear already, I'm about to say it overtly. This is very definitely not a tutorial video. Absolutely not. Not a tutorial. Go away. If you think this is a tutorial, click off. Go away. There's no way, equally, not just because I'm not too sure what I'm doing, but secondly, there's no way I can talk and do this at the same time. Never going to happen. So I'm going to shut up and focus all my intense brain processing power on just getting this damn thing started. Here we go. There's the spacer. There's the jute twine. I now have a loop in the jute twine, a hole if you like, that is twice as big as the spacer I'll be using. And I know it's twice as big because I wrapped the jute cord around it twice and tied it off. And as you can see, if I bring that up nice and close, nice and tight, tied off, slide it off the spacer, there's the hole. Ta-da! If I get no further than that today, I'm happy with how far I've got. There's that loop that I've just tied there. I'm going to hook it over a little twig on the tree, and I'm going to put it under some tension so that the knot that formed the loop is not at the top, it's not at the bottom, if you'll pardon the pun. It's halfway down that loop if you look at the loop vertically there. Now you can see there wasn't just one loop, there's now two loops. Now if you were to replicate that as I'm going to do, but trust me, I'm not going to bore you by letting you watch it all over and over again, you can start to see how these start to form the holes of the net. I'll do a few more with no voiceover. There's no way I can do this and explain it at the same time. Not yet anyway, maybe in a future video, but not at the moment. Let's just repeat that again then. All fingers and thumbs at the moment. Kinked that somewhere along the way there. Now has... Oops, something's gone wrong there. What's gone wrong there? I think one of them ended up being a slip knot, maybe the first one. Now 3 holes in the net. Wash, rinse, repeat. I realise that this isn't the most interesting video to watch. I get that. It's I'm not explaining what I'm doing. If you already know how to do this, it's not very interesting watching somebody else do something you already know and probably making a pig's ear of it. I get that. And if you don't know how to do it, I'm really not helping you, am I? Because I'm not explaining anything. But I hope you kind of understand and empathise that this part of this video wasn't meant to be instructional. And it's a good job, isn't it? It's much more about just capturing me on camera, trying something out, not quite for the first time. And I must admit, you've gone out of camera shot again, haven't you? Let me come to the camera. I must admit, I did go off camera for a little bit and looked at YouTube, but getting started is much easier the second time around, and muscle memory played a huge part in this. I think I said that during the course itself, or in the post-course video. Muscle memory plays a big part. It's just wash, rinse, repeat. It really is, apart from getting started. What I'm doing here is, if you look at this, you think to yourself, well, that's not really a net, Craig, that's just a long piece of thread with some holes either side of it. And you're right, but what I'm creating with this long thin piece, if you like, this what really looks just like some knotted cordage, what I'm doing here is I'm creating the width of the net at the moment. So if I were to make this, I don't know, 6 foot long, 6 foot deep, 6 foot length, that then would suggest that my net from across the top, from the left hand side to the right hand side, or the right hand side to the left hand side, is going to be 6 feet. Then I can start to build the depth of the net. I hope that makes sense. So yes, I'm making a net at the moment, absolutely I am, but it doesn't look like a net at the moment. It just looks like a long piece of cordage with some loops hanging off it somewhat scruffily. I'm creating the top of the net. I'll come back to you once I've created what I think is an adequate amount of length for the top of the net, and I'll show you what I do with it at that point there. So for those of you thinking, that ain't a net, Craig, you're absolutely right. Not yet, it isn't. I'm nearing the cordage, nearing the end of the cordage that's on this netting needle at the moment. So that's, when it runs out, that's naturally just going to become the width of my net. But I've just switched the camera back on because I just wanted to show you from a fairly slow start, in just a few minutes really, no more than that, to be perfectly honest, although you've been off camera so I don't expect you to trust me. You can see that I've become quite quick, become quite polished, become quite fluid at actually manoeuvring the netting needle, manoeuvring the spacer to create those knots, to create those loops. I said before, it just becomes very much a case of muscle memory, almost getting into a zone. Muscle memory really kicks in, and it's quite a relaxing, without wishing to sound too touchy-feely, it's quite a relaxing thing to do, to be really honest. After saying all that, I drops it. It's quite a relaxing thing to do, to be perfectly honest. A nice way to spend a few hours outdoors in the sun, come away with something productive at the end, and also a decent skill set practiced as well. So I'm coming to the end of this now, and that will naturally be the width of my net, the top of my net if you like. Then I'll create the depth to it. Remember a few minutes ago where it looked like all I was doing was creating a very long piece of cordage with the odd loop coming off it at angles, and it just didn't look like a net, and I explained that what I was doing was I was creating the top of the net, the width of the net. Well, I've done that now. What I've then done is I've strung that up between 2 trees and suspended it. And what I want to show you now, and I don't think you're going to see it if I just point, I'm going to take the camera close up. What I want to show you now is the width of that net, those holes starting to drop downwards and therefore increase the drop of the net. Let's take a closer look. There's one tree that I'm supporting the net from. There's the other tree that I'm supporting the net from. Let's go in a little closer Let me try and get the angle right. This cordage here is nothing more than a washing line. That is not part of the net. That's just there to suspend this net off the floor to allow me to now move downwards. But if we move along the width of this, I think you're picking it up. It's always really difficult to tell because of the light bouncing off the screen. But we can start to see, can't we, from left to right. This is the top of the net. It's only 2 holes deep, look. 1 hole, 2 hole deep. But what I can now do is I can do the same process that I was doing earlier on. There we go, we've got to the far right hand edge now. Let's go back again. I can now repeat that process I was doing earlier on, but instead of creating the width of the net, I'm now creating the drop of the net, the depth of the net, if you like. Fairly decent width. I would estimate that to be, well, it's taller than me, maybe 7 or 8 foot, 6 to 8 foot, I would say, probably 7 to 8 foot of net there. Right then, let's get on with actually creating the drop of this net now. Just got a made-at-home omelette mix here. It's a couple of eggs, it's a handful of ham shredded up, a couple of tomatoes sliced and a few mushrooms chunked up as well. Just all prepared at home, kept in the fridge. And there we have pavement pizza. Wunderbar. Not quite the omelette I'd envisaged, to be perfectly honest. It's not quite an omelette, to be perfectly honest, but I'm sure it will all go down the same way. It tastes like an omelette. Looks like 3-week-old roadkill, to be honest, but it does taste like an omelette, to be fair. I'm going to finish this, I'm going to start stripping the fire down and make my way home. I'm very mindful we didn't get to see the ogre, did we? The ogre. We didn't get to see that. Just run out of time, I'm afraid. It's about 7 PM now. The dog wants a tea. The dog wants a tea. The kids are still on school holidays, so I want to get home and see them before they get into bed. And I've still got probably about a 45-minute drive home, so I'll be on my way. So apologies if you've hung around for the ogre. I will do another video on it, and I'll probably do a video, to be honest, which makes more sense, introducing it, making a handle for it, and actually doing some craft projects for it rather than kind of splitting out the handle making for the craft projects. I'll probably do an all-in-one video, so it might actually be better overall. Let's think about what we did do in this video then, what I was aiming to do. I used the heavier tools for processing that. Something I've noticed a lot of today, especially working with cordage, not having a knife with you is a really big hindrance. There was no way I was going to cut cordage with the axe. It could do it, of course it could do it, but unlike a knife that you carry on you, it is there, it's on your hip. An axe isn't. An axe is leant up against a tree, or it's under my hammock, or it's on my bag, or something like that. And doing the amount of cord cutting that I was doing today, that just wasn't feasible. So in the end, I was using my lighter a lot to burn the jute twine, to split it, dampen the ends, and then work from there. So I did notice doing working with cordage and not having a to-hand cutting tool was a problem. But it really didn't impact on me in any other way today. And in fact, having an axe and having the saw, when it came to the tree felling, was absolutely the right thing to do. So I did not really, honestly miss the knife or the barcode folding Laplander saw today. So it was a good exercise to come out with just the heavier kit. Maybe I'll do that more often. You saw me make a net, or you've seen me start to make a net. I said right from the word go, this was not going to be a tutorial about net making. It wasn't a tutorial about net making. If you've never seen one before, it looks quite impressive. So I say myself. Actually, there's quite a few problems with it. Some of the holes are bigger than the others. Some of the knots are not tied quite right, so they've become a slip knot, which makes some holes smaller, other holes bigger. But a really, really, really good exercise to come out and to keep practicing that. And what I love about the net making is I can take that away with me now, can just untie it from the trees, collapse it all together. When I get home in the garden somewhere else, I can tie it up between some trees, put a bit of tension in it, and I can pick up where I left off. It is a completely transportable thing to be able to move around and practice with in different scenarios. I could do that at home. I could string it up at home, don't tell the missus, between a couple of dining chairs and just work from there. So really, really enjoyed doing that. The char cloth came out well. I've now got about 60 pieces of char cloth good to go. The reason I'm making so many, and I kind of do them on a semi-industrial scale, is I sell flint on eBay. Sounds like a weird thing to do, doesn't it? But not everywhere in this country, in the UK, has flint as predominant as I do in the southeast of the UK, living on chalky soil and chalky cliffs. You can't go anywhere within a mile of my house and not trip over big chunks and small chunks of flint. It's everywhere. So I sell that on eBay, and I also put in a couple of pieces of char cloth with it as well. If you're interested in looking, I'm going to put in the link in the description below. And that's why I kind of, when I do produce char cloth, I produce it on a massive scale, because when I sell the flint, I just take a few pieces out and drop it in with the flint as well. All in all, been a successful day. I've enjoyed it. I only came out, excuse me, very late afternoon, just before, very late afternoon, only been out 2 or 3 hours. Thoroughly enjoyable. Probably got just as much done today as I would do if I came out for a full day, just a lot more focused. Apologies again if you're hanging around for the Ogre introduction. I'll do that in another video. Other than that, I'm going to finish off the roadkill. Willow's probably going to help me. She's making some strange noises off camera. I'll get the fire taken down, and I'll see you very shortly in my next video. Thanks for watching. If you're not a do you want to do the outro, or shall I do it? I'll do the outro. Thank you. She looked like she was considering it then. She might make a better job of it than me. If you're not yet a subscriber, you know what to do by now. Please do click that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos. If you liked the video, like the video. If you think there's someone in your network that would enjoy watching it, feel free to share it with them. I'll see you in the woods very soon. Cheers.